Hi, this is Podcast Teacher Tales, Tails. I'm Paul Carr, and I believe this is podcast 161. And normally I just read my stories, but today I'm going to interview two human beings. And we were all Peace Corps volunteers from 1978 to 1980 in South Pacific Island of Western Samoa. And so this is Dr. Michael Bond. And Michael, where do you live now?
I live in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. No, Elizabeth City, North Carolina. And Paul has introduced me to you people before as Dr. Mikey.
Uncle Mikey.
Pardon me.
The infamous chickens and wing meat. That's him. That's him in the reel.
We live on.
So what did you do in Peace Corps, Mike?
Well, all of us were teachers. I was on different islands from you and the
Thank
infamous
God.
Harvey Geary, who you'll meet in a moment there.
That's Harvey. He's the nicest of the
The
three
good
of
one,
us.
the good
What can I
soul.
say?
He could be a Mormon, but he's not.
But so I was at the Longupalotu College was the name of it, but it was really more like junior high school, early high school level, human biology and sciences. And
How many kids in a class? About.
it varied, but different levels of education level. But just overgeneralizing, the best 2 years of my life, despite meeting these two.
And how old were you?
Old enough.
Then.
I guess 21, 22, right?
Yeah,
Weren't we all about that age?
Yeah.
And
I
this
was
is
a little
almost
older.
50 years difference now.
Yeah, that's 40. It was 47 years ago. It's unbelievable. So we still get together now and then, and we use our profane Samoan words now and then, and we can count in Samoan. Although I forgot how to do number 9.
Strange all these years to
Yeah.
remember the profane words, right?
And so here's Harvey.
Hi.
So Harvey, where do you live now?
I live in Charlottesville, Virginia.
And what did you do in Samoa that you can tell us about?
Okay. I was the assistant principal and math instructor at the Technical College of Western Samoa, which was a vocational school. We taught 6 different subjects, and it was a staff of Samoans and New Zealanders and us Peace Corps volunteers.
And how old were you when you went?
I was 22 when I first got there, and I think I was the youngest volunteer in the country at that time.
Well, maybe I was 22 or 3 then, I guess.
You were just
In that
you were a
ballpark.
mere child.
Do
no
the
matter
math. Do the math. What year were you born?
47 minus. Okay. Anyway,
Yeah, I was 25.
Yeah.
Young, dumb.
So I was on, Harvey and I were on the main island,
roomies.
and he was on the last island before the edge of the world, Savai'i. And I taught at Marist Brothers School. It's an all-boys school. It was an elementary school, and we used the British infant system, and it was run all by New Zealand brothers. Pretty interesting. And all of our kids had uniforms, so my boys all had blue shorts and a tan shirt, and then they had a little identifier for Marist Brothers School. What was your symbol? Do you remember in the uniform?
Golden brown, I believe. Yeah.
Golden brown.
But just since you touched on it, the island I was on, Savai'i, is the larger of the Samoan islands, and this was a Polynesian country, much like Hawaii. Hawaii in Savai'i and Hawaii is the same word. It means heaven, but the languages are very similar. S's to H's, W's to V's to W's. A lot of proximity in language-wise, but it was heaven for me for a couple of years. Not without its issues for all of us, but
Yeah. And,
good issues.
how about training, guys? How did that go?
Yeah.
Where do we have training, Harvey?
Well, we started our training at the University of Southern Illinois in Carbondale, and
Tropical
at a-
place,
yeah,
wasn't it?
very
Yeah,
tropical.
brilliant.
In November, and I think we started out with about 30 or 31 volunteers in our group. We ended up with maybe 19 at the end of the 2 years, but the training involved a lot of cultural information and a little tiny bit of language in Illinois, and then the main language training came when we were in Samoa. for the first, I think, 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Yeah, I think we had six
Yeah.
six in Carbondale and 6 in Samoa.
Of LA College, but
Yeah.
immersed.
Yeah, it was a total immersion program of instruction. So we, after we'd been there for a couple of days, we were loaded onto a bus and taken out to a village on the more remote side of the main island. And basically they said, so long, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Good luck. We'll have language instruction for you during the day, but you're on your own. So if you want a glass of water, you're going to have to figure out how to ask for a glass of water. And it was a very effective way of teaching us. And by the end of the time we were in the village, we certainly weren't fluent, but we could carry on a conversation with any
Or get in a
two-year-old that we
fight.
bumped into.
Get in
Or
a
we could
fight
get into a fight.
easily, but not out of one.
And we were a constant source of amusement to our Samoan hosts
Absolutely.
as well.
And I believe at that time the language method that they taught us was called the silent language method. And so I remember sitting in those horrible classes, and they would speak Samoan, and we had no idea what they were saying. And they would hold up something, and they go, "Oleala mea lea," and then we'd have to say, "Oleala mea." And it was, what is this?
what is this
we
thing?
didn't have a clue, you know. And then
Yeah.
they would add stuff on. They'd hold a pencil up or a Swiss Army knife or whatever.
Yeah, I think the first thing I learned how to say is, this is a pen.
Yeah.
Ole penny.
Ole penny lea.
Ole
Yeah.
penny lea.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a pen in my hand.
And I remember my first sentence. It was "Ua timo I Samoa." It is raining in Samoa, which was true. So what do you remember about training, Mike?
I remember that the three of us were up to that point after going through teacher training and all these things and, you know, what to do and culturally. But I apparently got bit by some bad mosquitoes that gave me what's called dengue fever.
Which is what do they call that? What is it? Remember bone?
Break
bone fever.
And
And it's come back with a vengeance now.
in the
It's
States.
around
It's in the
now,
States
yeah.
as well.
He was one of the first suckers to get it. He was a miserable.
I
know we're not
was
supposed
so
say-
sweet to
He was a
them.
bitch.
They were,
Bitch.
you know, my two best buddies, as you can see, we
He's
still
the
are.
miserable bastard ever seen.
Yeah, he never.
But I had an excuse, buddy. What about you? Anyway, mosquitoes did it. I was blaming the mosquitoes.
as well, and I turned out pretty good.
Yeah,
You did.
Yeah.
Darn
Did you got dengue?
It,
I
aff-
got dengue.
it affects people in different ways, apparently.
I didn't get it, and maybe that's why I'm the most abnormal of us. I should have gotten it.
Teacher's tails. We know what tail is spelled like.
What else? What else do you remember about training?
Teacher tails.
In
It was very effective. It was good. You know,
remember the movie they showed us? So the night before we went, they showed us Midnight Express.
Yeah.
we went into town to see
Which at our time, this was when some druggie got caught
In Turkey.
In Turkey, and
True story.
It was true story. It was a nightmare for him. And
of all the movies before we take off to go
well,
to
they
a
did that
foreign
on
country.
purpose.
Oh,
Yeah.
we went into town to see it. Actually, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Regardless, we saw it.
Yeah, but the poor guy was raped, I think, when he was in prison. That's how he got out. Anyway, it sobered the hell out of us. And as Mikey told us last night, when we went back to our Peace Corps lodgings, what did you hear?
Flush. Everyone who had any thoughts of taking any strange mind-altering substances,
They were
pretty
dumping
much
it.
flushed
They
it
were
after watching that movie. So it got the
Dumping
job done.
Big time.
That's so we've heard.
Yeah. So then we flew after 6 weeks. We flew into American Samoa, and they put us in the Rainmaker Hotel, and that was kind of very stunning for us to see. It was just overpowering visually, and we then flew into Western Samoa, and we had 6 more weeks isolated in what's called Aveli College.
I remember the first thing they opened the airplane
Oh,
door.
yeah,
remember,
humidity.
and the smell, but the smell of the lava. You know, you get
Right.
got
It's
actually
just
don't smell it after a while.
Earthy,
Yeah.
wet.
With a little bit of frangipani.
Yeah.
Flour
very
mixed
nice.
in the air, very sweet smell, and it was
Really, it's
in
so
addition
different.
to
The flowers that
humidity
make lays
hits you
out of
like
them.
a sandbag. Yeah.
So then we did 6 weeks in Aveli College, and they taught us more language, some agriculture, minimal agriculture, faux pas to do, which Mike succeeded at many times.
Uncle Mikey did. That
Uncle
was my
Mikey, yeah.
assumed name. Yeah.
And let's see.
Well, we were taught, how to say my name is and to introduce ourselves properly. We all had adaptations of our English names into the really
Samoan.
very vowel-based Samoan language, so there was.
So
easy
he's
for
Harvey, but you became,
Via.
and I with Paul, so that's Poli, and that's Mike. So in Samoan, he became
Mika. or
Mika.
Uncle Mikey.
And so we refer to each other affectionately as that. That's what we call each other. And I mean, we're all in our freaking 70s now, so it's kind of, and yeah.
And then we got our assignments for as to where we wanted to go, or we had choices of which school do you want to teach at, whatever. And then we parted ways because I went to a different island.
I remember, and they said, who wants a true Peace Corps experience to go out on the edge of the end of the world in the last village before the world careens off into a cliff? And he said, me! And I said, this boy
See ya,
wants
bud.
electricity. I want access to women in a city and electricity and a flush toilet. And I was in luck because in Samoa they have one city with a few flush toilets and some electricity. And Harvey took that option.
I did the
too.
same. I wanted to be involved in the administration of a school, so they had an opening where that would be helpful. So I ended up there, where
That's right, yeah.
Paul and I eventually became roommates. Not too far in a lovely place down by the ocean, and we took the bus every morning to get to school. You walked,
Or I
think.
walked, yeah.
And
Somebody had to do it.
Mike would come in to stay with us, and that was always an adventure for the three of us in civilization. To have
Yeah, we
Mike
kind of had a
show up.
good rule that Peace Corps had a rule that if you went and visited somebody else, quite often it would be unbeknownst to the whoever was the owner of the house that you were coming. So you had to bring food with you to feed everybody else. And so Michael would
Gift?
show up, and gifts, and he would show up and
Usually with something inedible, but
almost always
he did show
inedible,
up with food.
or he would make it inedible. He yeah. Oh, the things this boy did. Oh, the things he did.
Cooking, yeah.
Burning stoves and pots and flooding bathrooms and living rooms.
Intentions were good, though.
Intentions were very good.
Yeah, right,
And delivering chickens I delivered chickens for him from New Zealand for his chicken project, which you've heard of on here. Uncle Mikey.
Mikey does the chickens.
Yeah. And very interesting.
And while we're on it, just not patting myself on the back, Paul wrote an article even before Teacher's Tales that there was a book called "The Funniest Job You'll Ever Love," in lieu of the slogan "The Toughest Job You Ever Love." But Paul did the article called "Uncle Mikey and the Famed Wing Bean." The wing bean was
He
this,
is the Uncle Mike in that story.
and the wing bean was this. Everything is full of protein.
You couldn't kill
Edible
it. You could
plant.
eat the stem, the leaves, the roots,
So
and you
on
could
paper-
not kill it.
But you had to have an appetite for this or want to eat it. Pods, beans, but everything was edible, and it was great on paper. But the Samoans,
They didn't like
What
it.
is this stuff?
They don't like
You
veggies.
know.
Samoans don't like veggies.
So anyway, I tried my wing bean garden, and that's where the story came from. So look it up. But Paul,
Yeah, it's-
once again,
it's
if
funny.
you know
It's
his
humorous in the
podcast,
end.
he did a great job on the story.
A horse gets involved, and the village chieftain gets involved.
It was fun.
And the local priest gets involved.
I was a good guy. He was a
and
bad
there
guy.
he was. Wing bean. didn't work out so well.
The excommunication went off without
Yeah.
a hitch,
Yep.
however.
What else, Harv? What else? Peace Corps.
Well, I think a lot of what we were talking about in training and having to bring food was really very much part of the Samoan culture. So
True. Right.
anytime we would go to visit the families that largely adopted us, we would always be conscious of that. And it's a great thing to learn about the culture which values hospitality and courtesy above all else. And so for somebody like Mike, that was a very alien concept, but I think it probably helped him a lot. But in the long run, it really helped sort of make a cohesive group of all of us. Peace Corps volunteers and the other people that we befriended, I think really valued the efforts that we were making towards embracing that Samoa
To
and their
build on that.
culture. Please.
I think no matter I think part of your goal of doing this is to say great things about the Peace Corps.
Right.
As we speak in 2025 with the current administration, there's been some rumblings and grumblings that Peace Corps may be, kiboshed, but will be nice and not expound on that part of it. But I do think no matter where, I think I can speak for you guys too, no matter where a volunteer is, whatever he or she does, whatever the job, we go there that we're going to help them. Well, yeah, but also
It helps us.
they helps
Yeah.
us tremendously.
Yeah. And so the way it works is the host country puts out a request for what they need. Like maybe they need some administrators, maybe they need high school teachers, maybe they need elementary school teachers, and so they do that. Peace Corps would try to fill that need, and they also had agronomists and fishery specialists. We
A
had
whole
one
spectrum.
guy, yeah, the whole spectrum. One guy in our group was filariasis, mosquitoes. I think somebody was supposed to do dairy. It never took off. Can you think of other stuff?
We had a
that
guy
were-
who was an agriculture economist, and he worked on a lot of the aspects of what was a profitable crop or a sustainable agriculture, essentially. It wasn't known as that at the time, but that was the focus of what he was doing.
Right.
And I
And
think that
now
was a really a valuable thing.
Huge part is IT, anything computer related. Now it's changed, but it has not. In the basic premise, no matter what the
We had map makers.
Lord knows. But
Yeah, it
but you do end up, or again, we were early 20s. I think most of them, well, Harvey didn't, but Paul and I grew up a lot from that experience. But
Yeah,
Nah.
there were a variety of specialties. Most of us were teachers, but some of the teachers were also very highly specialized in the areas. One of our good friends, a guy named Keith Buccagnani, was an auto mechanic and small engine mechanic, and he worked at
Right.
the school that I worked in. And we had a welder from Texas, another mechanic from Texas, Jim and Edwin, and there were a variety of people doing very specialized things.
another thing, can you imagine being in a large country in Africa or whatever? I mean, that we were on an island, so we would run. These guys would run into people too much, probably like you had no privacy at all after a while. But that depending on what nation you are assigned to, it's a whole range of things that could happen. You could not see another volunteer for months at a time if you're in larger areas, whatever.
Like,
So
like
being,
where you were.
yeah, but
But you had other volunteers at your school,
yeah, did.
and they may not have been American volunteers.
But can you
right?
imagine other countries like
Oh,
these
yeah,
large
yeah.
African nations? And, you may not even see the whole
So it was
2
kind
years.
of cool for
so
us
much variation.
because Samoa, unbeknownst to many people, was a German colony. I mean, who would think the Germans had a colony in the South Pacific? But they did. And the history of it was after the First World War, the Germans lost it, and then it became a British colony, and then after that, it became a New Zealand colony. And I bring this up because all of those factors
Culture.
made Samoa. And so, like, I had students that were named Hitler, and Bismarck. Like, wow. And remember, we had that, what was it, that German bridge? There was a German steel bridge. It was that the Germans built. And
The Germans left a lot of good
yeah,
things there.
a lot of, and it's kind of funny, after one colonial group leaves a nation and another colonial group comes in, like the Germans were there, they left, and the Brits come in, then to the locals, like the Samoans in this case, the Germans look real good because they were gone. So a lot of the history is forgotten, and most assuredly the Germans were horrible taskmasters too, and the whole thing in those days was chocolate and copra, coconuts and cocoa.
Oh, they also
And-
don't forget, Paul, that they brewed beer.
And beer, yeah, the Germans were great beer.
That was one of their foreign exchange efforts was to build a brewery in Samoa. The German government did as a form of foreign aid, because a lot of the currency, a lot of the revenue of the country would go out of the country to import beer. So instead of doing that, they were able to brew locally. and would help with the balance of payments and so
That
forth.
was your part-time
You kind of
job as
learn
well.
a lot about how that sort of thing works and the analysis that went into how do you apply foreign aid in a way that's going to really affect the economy. And I think that was a pretty effective way.
Yeah,
Not that, you know.
But you tested product quite a
Well,
bit,
we
didn't
were-
you?
we were-
Product test.
We did a lot of
Product
testing.
tester, yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot
Glad to
of
be done.
a lot of the problem, some of the complaints against Peace Corps, is that we ended up kind of promoting and assisting in the brain drain, because the Samoan educated class would leave, they'd get educated, and then think, I'm going to make $100 a month in Samoa, but I can go to New Zealand or America or Australia and make 2,000 or 3,000. So they would leave. And so one complaint was
We were
that
manpower positions.
we were plugging holes, and so ideally, what we should have been doing, and we should have been training teachers, not being teachers, and Samoa has done that now. I know the amount of teachers they have there is greatly reduced.
Smart idea.
And here you guys talk for a minute. I'm gonna get something. I thought of a cool timing. So think of something to say, guys, about Peace Corps.
Well, I think one of the important things about the Peace Corps was that we were able to, bring Americans into a country that had that knew Americans from starting with World War II when it was a major staging base, but also in a way that sort of blew apart myths, and people just met ordinary folks who would walk the walk and talk the talk, and eat in the same place they did, go to the same hospital they did. So we made some really good friendships, and I think it really created an atmosphere of trust between the United States and that nation and their government and the people of that nation, who again were very accepting and open people, willing to accept us and take us at face value until they determined that we weren't, or the person that they were talking to wasn't worthy of that. And they're very, very insightful people. So for us, it helped us understand another culture very deeply, because we were living in a very ordinary way in the day-to-day basis.
Rubbing elbows, so to
Rubbing
speak.
elbows. And I think for them it was a way of looking at Americans in a different way than they saw on television or heard on radios or read in the paper.
They can see nowadays the internet and everything about the bombs and the warfare, et cetera. And how do we try to, not combat is the wrong word probably, but how do we show them we're not all about that and they're normal people, even to this day? But that's the sad, overlooked part of the Peace Corps. We're not just strictly providing job manpower. It's, and we're not CIA agents. We're normal people, and we need to show them that we're like that. And I remember in the village, the misconceptions that sometimes I'd have a talk with some members of my Samoan family that I was with, and we don't want to go there. You have too many guns, and it was like, wow, how do I reconcile?
And that was a long time ago too.
Yeah, and that was.
Wow.
And what does it look like now? Without going on modern politics stories of going there, but in a subtle way, just without having to be bombastic about it, just like Harv's saying, just to rub elbows, to be there with them, and doing things together, and show by example, actions louder than words, all those cliches. It's a huge thing.
And then sometimes some good plans went awry, and this is a rhinoceros beetle, okay? And they are everywhere in the South Pacific. And what rhinoceros beetles like to do, unfortunately, is to eat coconut palms. What they do is they go right down the stem. Hearts
of palms, right?
And they split it, and they destroy productivity for coconut plants. So this is how good things go wrong. So the Samoan government decided that they would put a bounty on these. All right. So every one of these you kill, you got a penny. So sounds good, right?
Especially a little villager.
Yeah. However, at this time, there was not a lot of cash. Even for us, when we first went, I think we got $180 each, and I think in the end it was bumped a month. $180 a month, and it was bumped to $240 later on. Okay. So that's us, okay? So the poor Samoans are working for nothing. They're mostly subsistence farming with taro and ta'amu and fishing and coconut. Anyway, so government says, we're going to give you a penny for each one of these you kill. So what happens? The Samoans decide to make breederys. So you get a 50-gallon oil drum, you take the top off, you put water and mulch in it, and you throw in a couple of these, and you got a whole bunch of them after a while, and then you get all your pennies, and you've just created a monster. So instead of getting rid of these pests, they've just created a wild breedery throughout the islands. And the island logic for us sometimes didn't work, and we were confronted with crazy things like that. And also I know they had a couple island fires. And what they would do is they would, really bad fires, and they would have volunteers come in from New Zealand and Australia, and they'd fight fires. And the fires would be put out at night. And then they started again early in the morning somehow. And what happened was villagers were being paid by the government to put the fires out. But if you put the fires out, you don't get any more money. So we would get frustrated by stuff like that now and then. And I know when I used to teach science to elementary school kids, there was no way in God's creation that I could convince them that clouds were not living, because clouds moved. So
Excuse me?
So it was a meeting of two different worlds, and we learned a real lot by it. And I would like to think that we have helped Samoa. It makes me really sad that the current administration is thinking of getting rid of it as much as they can. But so we speak languages, we speak other languages. Because of that, we had exposure to Germans, we had exposure to New Zealanders, to Aussies, and Japanese, and it really widened our perspective, and I think we in the world is a much better place off for what happened there. And Mikey's going to do a
Plug.
a plug. So here, go ahead, shoot, do.
Okay. I'll be concise and won't be silly.
No, you won't.
Anyway, you wouldn't be here listening to this or seeing this if you weren't aware of what a great job Paul does on this. I try to contribute my little bit. I wrote a book that can be found. Oh, it's probably backwards on your screen. Who
That's
knows?
okay.
But it can be found on Amazon. Samoans, like Harvey mentioned a moment ago, very much like Hawaiian language, and like I was telling you before, a lot of vowels, beautiful languages. And they could not quite enunciate Peace Corps. You've got to have more vowels than just Peace Corps. So the word that means Peace Corps in Samoan, again, if it's backwards, I apologize, but PC Corps. So if you look up, I wrote a book, and it's also, you can get the audio version of it, PC Corps, Pisikoa, and it means Peace Corps book. So I wrote it. There's a lot of pictures of these knuckleheads and things that we did, and I'm kind of proud of it. It's certainly not War and Peace, but for you page turners who like photos, there's a lot of photos in there too.
Yeah, and I think will be an invaluable source as a primary source for the 78 to 80s, because
Thanks, Paul.
Samoa is not the 78 and 80s anymore. It is a different place. And we were there during the Cold War, and Uncle Mikey met some Russians one time. He got brought on their ship, and there's a hammer and sickle was on their smokestack. And it was an interesting time.
This is right when the Russians invaded Afghanistan.
Yeah, that's right. So, any final words, guys?
Well, I was just going to say the subtitle to this is PC Corps South Pacific Diary, 78 to 80, Enduring Uncle Mikey. And just, I kept a diary every day about it.
Yes, he did. He used to lose it all the time. Yeah, bright orange book.
But yeah, very therapeutic.
The grammar's not the best, but
stop.
it's a good story.
Yeah.
Stop it.
So anyway,
where's the love?
What can I say?
Yeah. So
I've been tolerant.
thank you for listening. This is our pitch for Peace Corps. Peace Corps is a good thing. We hope it endures. It's really good to live overseas. You learn languages, you learn different food,
and you get to keep great friends like these two all these years.
Yeah.
Really
I mean,
do.
48 years we're in contact still,
We still put up.
In spite of all of that.
In spite of that. So here, what we can say the Samoan word for bye, right?
Right. Okay.
So ready?
Uno, Tasi lua tolu.
Fa.
Soy
Soy
fua.
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 Nice, nice, nice.